AITA for ruining my parents' marriage after a DNA test led me to my bio dad, exposed my mom's lies, and proved she hid the truth for 19 years. I, 19M, grew up in what I thought was a pretty normal family. My dad, 47M, has been in my life for as long as I can remember. He raised me. He was there for every birthday, every school play, every soccer game. He never made me feel like I wasn't his. But deep down, I always knew the truth. He wasn't my biological father. It wasn't some big family secret. My mom, 46F, told me from a young age that I was the product of a relationship she'd had before she met my dad. The story was always the same. She said my biological father didn't want to be a dad and walked away the moment he found out she was pregnant. She'd say things like, "He didn't want you, but your dad now did." That's what matters. It hurt to hear, but I accepted it. As a kid, I didn't dwell on it too much. I knew I was loved. My dad never once treated me like anything other than his son. To me, he was my real father in every way that counted. My mom's story about my bio father became just a background fact of my existence. Sad, but not life-defining. That changed when I was 12. Around that age, I started developing some health issues. Nothing life-threatening, but complicated enough that doctors wanted as much family medical history as possible. Every appointment, it seemed like the same questions came up. Do you know if there's a history of this on your father's side? Any genetic markers? Any autoimmune issues? Each time, my mom would shake her head and tell the doctors that she had reached out to my bio father, but he refused to give any information. She'd sigh and say, "He just doesn't care, I'm sorry." Sitting there in the exam room, hearing that was like a punch in the gut every time. I remember one night, after an especially frustrating appointment, I was crying at home. I asked my dad why my biological father hated me so much that he wouldn't even help with medical information. My dad hugged me and told me it wasn't my fault, that some people just don't know how to step up, and that I was better off without someone like that in my life. He comforted me, but deep down, I still felt hollow. It wasn't about wanting a relationship with this man. It was about knowing he didn't care whether I was sick or not. That feeling stayed with me for years. Every time I was referred to a new specialist, I'd have to explain that I only had half my family's medical history. Doctors would always nod, make a note, and move on, but it made me feel incomplete. Like half my story was missing. And the worst part was believing that the missing piece was withheld, not because of circumstances, but because the man who gave me half my DNA simply didn't care if I lived or died. At the time, I never thought to question my mom's story. She told it so consistently, and I was just a kid who trusted his parents. I figured it must be true. It wasn't until years later, when someone else in the family hinted at things not being what they seemed, that I realized there might be more to the story. But at 12, all I knew was the version my mom had fed me. That my bio father abandoned me before I was even born. And I carried that with me like a scar, never realizing that behind the scar was a much deeper wound. One carved not by my bio father's supposed rejection, but by my mom's lies. After that first round of medical questions when I was 12, life settled into a frustrating rhythm. Every time I saw a new doctor or specialist, the same thing happened. They'd go down their list of questions, and when we got to the part about family history, I have to explain, I only have information from my mom's side. My biological father refused to give any. Some doctors would just nod and move on, others would press a little, trying to see if there was any way to get the missing half. I'd sit there, cheeks burning, while my mom would shake her head and say she tried, but he wanted nothing to do with me. And every single time, it reopened the wound. It's hard to describe what that does to a kid. I didn't grow up yearning for a connection with this man. I had my dad, the one who raised me, and that was enough. But knowing that someone out there, someone who was supposed to care even a little, couldn't be bothered to provide information that might help me, that cut deep. It wasn't rejection of me as a son. It felt like rejection of me as a human being. At home, I talked to my dad about it a lot. He never once badmouthed my bio father, even though I know he must have wanted to. He'd just tell me some people can't handle responsibility, and that didn't mean there was anything wrong with me. He'd remind me of the people who did love me, the people who showed up. He'd say, family isn't about blood, it's about who's there for you. Those words meant a lot to me at the time. Still, the seed was planted. I carried around this idea that my bio father knew I existed and just didn't care. It colored the way I saw myself in subtle ways. Like, if even your own father doesn't want you, what does that say about your worth? By the time I was a teenager, it had become part of my identity. I didn't talk about it much with friends, but whenever the topic of dads came up, I always felt a little different. My dad, my real dad in every sense, was amazing. But I couldn't shake the ghost of the other one, the absent one. I also swallowed every word my mom ever said about the situation. Why wouldn't I? She told the story so consistently, and I trusted her. She always framed it like she had tried her best, but he was heartless. She'd sigh and shake her head, almost like she was the victim too, left behind by a man who didn't care about the child they created. And I believed her, entirely. It wasn't just about my medical stuff either. Over the years, whenever I struggled with something, school stress, social problems, anxiety, my mom would sometimes bring it back to the story. You're stronger than he ever was. He couldn't even handle being a dad, but you'll rise above that. She made it sound empowering, like I was living proof that she had overcome his rejection. Looking back now, I see how twisted that was. At the time, it felt like comfort. She was telling me I was better than the man who had supposedly abandoned me. But in reality, she was reinforcing a lie, feeding me this narrative that made me dependent on her version of events. Meanwhile, my dad, the man who was there through all of this, was quietly carrying the weight. I didn't realize it then, but later I learned just how much my mom had kept from him too. At the time, though, I thought he knew everything. I thought he was fully on board with the story she'd told. So I kept growing up with this half-truth carved into my identity, that half my bloodline didn't want me, that the missing pieces in my medical history were because a man who should have cared simply didn't. And I never questioned it. Not once. Not until someone else in the family let slip that maybe things weren't quite the way my mom made them out to be. For years, I carried my mom's version of the story without question. It wasn't something I dwelled on every day, but it lived in the background of my mind, shaping the way I thought about myself and my past. I thought the truth was already decided. My biological father didn't want me, and that was that. Then about a year ago, something shifted. I was at a family gathering on my mom's side when my aunt, her younger sister, pulled me aside. We were making small talk, and somehow the conversation drifted to my health stuff and the difficulty of not knowing my full medical history. She got this strange look on her face, then quietly said, "You know, things might not be exactly the way your mom told you." I froze. Those words planted instant suspicion in my head. I asked her what she meant, but she clammed up fast, shaking her head. "It's not my place, but maybe you should look into it yourself. The worst that can happen is he refuses to talk to you, but you might be surprised." Her words stuck with me for weeks. I kept turning them over in my mind. If my mom had been lying, or even just twisting the truth, what would that mean? Why would she do that? And if my aunt knew something, what was she keeping from me? Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I ordered a 23andMe kit. At first, I told myself it was just about the medical stuff, that I wanted to see if I could learn anything useful from my doctors. But deep down, I think I knew I was searching for more. I was searching for the truth. When the results came back, my heart nearly stopped. I was matched with a paternal aunt, someone I had no idea existed. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my hands shaking. For the first time in my life, I had a tangible connection to my father's side. I messaged her cautiously, not sure what to expect. To my surprise, she responded warmly. She was confused at first, then shocked. She told me flat out, her brother, my biological father, had no idea I even existed. She said she was 100% certain of it. It was like the ground shifted beneath my feet. For years, I'd lived with the certainty that he had known about me and rejected me. Now, suddenly, I was being told he hadn't even known I was alive. My aunt offered to act as a go-between to ease me into things. I agreed, though my nerves were on fire the whole time. She reached out to him, and before long, she told me he wanted to meet me, that he was shocked, overwhelmed, but ready to step up now that he knew. I can't even describe the cocktail of emotions that hit me. Relief, anger, confusion, sadness, all tangled together. Relief that maybe he hadn't rejected me after all. Anger that I'd been lied to for so long. Confusion about what this meant for my identity. Sadness for all the years that had been lost. Still, despite the fear, I agreed to meet him. Because I needed answers. Because if nothing else, I deserved the truth. When my paternal aunt told me my biological father wanted to meet, I couldn't think straight for days. I kept asking myself what I'd even say to him. Would I yell? Would I break down crying? Why just sit there frozen? The only thing I knew was that I needed to see him. After 19 years of believing he had abandoned me, I couldn't pass up the chance to hear his side. My aunt set up a meeting at her house, a safe middle ground. I remember walking in, my heart pounding in my chest. And then there he was, my biological father, 45M. He looked nervous, like he wasn't sure if I was about to hug him or spit in his face. Honestly, I didn't know either. The first thing he did was hand me a folder. Inside were pages of medical information, family history, genetic conditions, notes he'd already typed up for me. "I wanted you to have this right away," he said. "I know how important it is." That alone almost broke me. For years, I'd begged for this information, believing he had refused to give it. And here he was, giving it to me the very first time we met. Then he started apologizing, over and over. He swore he had never known about me. He said he would have been there if he had, that he would have done whatever it took. He said, "I can't get those years back, but I want to be here now, if you'll let me." It was overwhelming. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to demand why he hadn't tried harder, why he hadn't somehow known. But another part of me, the louder part, could see the sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't lying. He had truly been kept in the dark. As we talked more, he explained the backstory. He and my mom had broken up because she cheated on him. After that, she cut off all contact. He never heard from her again, not even through my aunt, who he used to get along with. He had no idea she was pregnant. He had lived his life believing that chapter was closed, while my mom was busy raising me under a completely fabricated story. I sat there in shock, trying to reconcile everything I thought I knew with what I was hearing. For years, my mom had painted him as a heartless man who walked away. Now I was hearing that she had never even told him, that she had deliberately erased him from my life. I didn't know how to process it. On one hand, I felt relieved. He hadn't rejected me. He hadn't known. That small shift in perspective lifted a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying so heavily. On the other hand, I felt betrayed. My mom had let me grow up thinking I was unwanted. She had let me cry myself to sleep over a man who wasn't there. Not because he didn't care, but because she had never given him the chance. Before I left that day, my bio dad told me he was willing to be a donor if I ever needed one. That he'd answer any questions whenever I was ready. He didn't pressure me, didn't try to force a relationship, just left the door open. Driving home, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The folder of medical info sat heavy in my lap. The truth was right there in black and white, and I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. The next step was obvious, even if it terrified me. I had to confront my mom. After meeting my biological father and hearing his side of the story, I couldn't keep it bottled up. I knew I had to talk to my mom. Part of me wanted to scream at her the second I walked through the door, but another part of me still hoped there was some explanation, some missing piece that would make this all less awful. I waited a couple of days, trying to figure out how to bring it up. Finally, one evening, I asked her directly, "Why did you lie to me about my biological father?" Her face changed instantly. At first, she looked shocked, then defensive. "What are you talking about?" she asked. I told her about the DNA test, about finding my paternal aunt, about meeting my bio dad, and everything he told me. I laid out the medical records he had given me. She shook her head, her voice sharp. "Those are lies. He's trying to make himself look good." But I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't a kid who automatically took her word as gospel. I pushed harder. "Mom, I saw the records. I heard it from his sister. You told me he abandoned me, but he didn't even know I existed. Why would you lie about that?" She froze for a long time. Then, finally, her shoulders slumped. Her voice softened, but the words made my stomach twist. "I didn't want you to grow up in a broken home. I wanted us to be a normal family. He wouldn't have been a good father anyway." I stared at her in disbelief. "So, instead, you made me grow up thinking I wasn't wanted? You let me think I was abandoned? You let me cry over a man who never even had a chance?" That's when my dad, my stepdad, the man who raised me, walked into the room. He had overheard enough to put the pieces together. His face was pale with anger. "Is this true?" he asked her. She tried to deflect. "You don't understand. I did what was best for us." But he wasn't having it. "You lied to me for 19 years. You made me complicit in keeping him away from his son. You let me comfort him when he was crying, when he thought he wasn't wanted, and all along you knew the truth." His voice was shaking with rage. My mom started crying, insisting she did it to protect me, to protect us. But it was too late. The damage was done. My dad looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. He didn't deserve this. Neither of us did. In that moment, everything shattered. The family I thought I had was gone. My relationship with my mom cracked wide open, and my dad's trust in her broke completely. He told her he couldn't stay married to someone who had lied for so long, someone who had been willing to compromise my health and my identity just to preserve her own version of a normal family. Within weeks, he moved out. He filed for divorce. Meanwhile, my siblings, who had grown up believing the same lies, turned their anger on me. They said if I hadn't gone digging, if I hadn't brought all of this up, their parents would still be together. They didn't want to hear that the lies were the real problem, not me. To them, I was the one who had destroyed the family. I knew the truth, but it didn't make the guilt any easier. I hadn't set out to ruin anyone's marriage. All I wanted was answers. Answers that might help me stay healthy. Answers I've been told didn't exist. But in the process, I pulled the thread that unraveled everything. Now I'm left staring at the pieces of what used to be my family. My dad, my real dad in every way that matters, has moved out and filed for divorce. My mom avoids me like I'm the enemy. My siblings barely speak to me, and when they do, it's to tell me that I ruined everything. But here's the thing. The medical information I got from my biological father has already been useful. My doctors were able to confirm that some of my issues came from his side, and now they have a clearer plan for managing my health. That alone made this search worth it. For the first time, I feel like I'm not fighting in the dark. And meeting my bio dad, it didn't erase 19 years of absence, but it gave me clarity. He wasn't the monster I was told he was. He didn't reject me. He didn't even know I existed. That knowledge alone lifted a weight I didn't realize I've been carrying for so long. Still, the fallout has been brutal. My mom's lies are out in the open, and her marriage is over because of it. And even though I know, logically, that it's her actions that led us here, I can't help but feel guilty. If I had never searched, if I had never taken that DNA test, maybe my family would still be intact. AITA for finding my bio father, exposing my mom's lies, and ultimately ruining my parents' marriage?